Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are for group 5 and we will present about weed control technique quiz. Let me introduce our group member. For Ristriadhi, Rahayu, Wibawandi with number student 203. Aginda, Tiara, Girsang with student number 204. Frida, Shinta, Megawati with student number 205. And Siti Nurazizah, Ihwani with student number 206.
First of all, before we'll explain about how to control the weeds, I'll explain a little about types of weed. Weed classification based on morphology and biotany, there are three types. First is grasses, and the example is Cynodon dactylon, sedges, Cyperus rotundus, and broadleaves, Ageratum conizoides. Weed classification based on life cycle, first is annual weeds, who live and die within 1 year. Biennial weeds, this type of weed grow into season, and perennial weeds live more than 2 years. And last is weed classification based on habitat. There's two types, aquatic weeds and terrestrial weed. Aquatic weeds grow in water. They are typically categorized into 4 main groups depending on their grow habit. And terrestrial weeds, this weed grow on land and including in moor and plantation.
Weeds controlled by type. Grasses. This type of weeds have stolons, not tubers. The stolons are present in the soil and form a complex network that is very difficult to overcome with mechanical weeds control. So an effective control method is to control chemically by using certain chemical, such as this type of weed has extraordinary resistance to mechanical control because this type of sedges has a stem tubers that grow in the ground and can last for 4 months. So an effective control method is to control chemically by using certain chemicals. Broadleaf. These weeds grow a lot at the end of the cultivation period. This competition that occurs between these plants and cultivated plants is competition for light. So an effective control method is to control chemically by using certain chemicals.
Annual weeds, the effective way of controlling is by controlling mechanically, namely by cutting or trimming, and also shallow plowing. Cutting should be done when the weeds are approaching flowering or when the leaves are growing vigorously. In general, annual weeds are easy to control, but their growth is very fast because the production of seed is so much. Hence, controlling annual weeds costs more. Biennial weeds, effective control is by mechanical control by damaging the top and crown and lifting. The weed life cycle of 2 seasons is more than 1 year, but not more than 2 years. In the first year, this weed produces a rosette form. In the second year, it flowers, produces, and finally dies. And in the rosette period, weeds of this type are generally sensitive against herbicides. Perennial weeds. Weeds that can live for more than 2 years or maybe nearly unlimited. Effective control is by mechanical control by damaging both part below and above the ground.
Aquatic weeds. Water weed control in Indonesia is generally done physically manually or by means of a digger, which is quite expensive. The weed degrade results are then collected in a dump site. Conventionally, aquatic weeds control can be carried out chemically using herbicides, but it is quite expensive, while its effective is still not as expensive. Considering that the control of aquatic weeds physically and chemically is quite expensive and is considered ineffective, a biological control approach which the result of natural enemies has been developed. Terrestrial weeds. Land weeds are weeds that live on land, can be weeds that live a year, 2 years, or years, unlimited. The effective control of terrestrial weed is carried out by technical culture named by flooding.
Mechanical weed control. Weed control in this way relies on physical or mechanical strength, either with ordinary hands, simple tools, or heavy equipment. Control mechanical weeds can be done in several ways. Manual revocation. This method is very practical, efficient, and inexpensive if applied to an area that is not lagged, such as on the home page in rows and months where the heavy equipment is difficult to reach. Soil cultivation. Turning the soil between plants to put plant residue and weeds into the soil by stepping on or burying the weeds. Inundation. Inundation practices are generally successful for weeds perennial. Inundation is limited by a dog with a height of 15 to 25 centimeters for 2 to 8 weeks. Previously, it was plowed first and no plants were allowed sticking out above the water surface. Inundation can succeed satisfactorily if water level does not cause new growth. Burning weeds. Weed control by burning is a very inexpensive weed control measure often used in the traditional clearing of gardens or fields. The use of fire in this controlling weed has a positive effect, namely that there are no residual side effects as is the case with the use of herbicides and other disturbance such as pests. Diseases can also die. However, this process has a negative effect, namely it creates a new problem, namely smoke export, which can interfere with human breathing. Usage of mulch. The use of mulch aims to block its arrival sunlight on the weeds and block the growth of the top. Source of mulch can control weeds.
And then our last material is chemical weeds control. Chemical control of weeds is a method of controlling the weeds by giving chemical, both liquid and soil, directly to the weeds. A chemical used to control weeds is commonly called herbicide. Herbicides can be classified as follows. First, herbicide grouping based on the growth of weeds. The first is herbicide pre-grown. This herbicide was applied to soil before the weed grew. All herbicide pre-boiled is a herbicide-acting herbicide or herbicide applied to land and systemic. These herbicide examples are diuron, bromacil, oxyfloran, ametrin, buctachlor, and methyl metsulforone. The second is herbicide post-grown. This herbicide is applied when the weeds grows. All post-grown herbicides or herbicide applied to weeds and can be systemic or non-systemic. A post-herbicide example is glyphosate, paraquat, glufosinate, and propanil. The second type is herbicide grouping based on the types of translocation in plants. Herbicides contact or not transmit. Herbicide come in contact with weeds by diggering part of weeds that is exposed directly to herbicides. This herbicide's quality is not transmit or pass on a weed's body. Herbicides contact selectively is oxyfluorophane, oxycydiazone, and propanil, while non-selective ones like debug and glufosinate. And systemic herbicide or transmitted. Systemic herbicide can kill the weed through a poison translocation through coat the weed. This type of herbicide can be applied both to the herder or to the ground. Herbicide bottom the line is glyphosate and sulfose. And the third type is herbicides grouping based on selectivity. The first is selective herbicides. Selective herbicides are herbicides that are toxic to certain weeds. For example, ametrine, diuron, oxyfluoropane, clomazone, and carbendazole. And non-selective herbicides. Non-selective herbicides are herbicides that can kill almost all types of plants, including cultivated plants. For example, glyphosate and paraquat. Thank you. It's all from our groups. And leave a comment if you have any question.